Hey guys, this is another Loyota's review. This time we're going to go over the Season 14 ADC itemization. So here's my tier list as usual. And what I'm going to hit on first is the mainstay crit items. So we have Infinity Edge. The main difference between Infinity Edge and the old one is that this is 100 gold less and it has 5 less AD. That's it. Now, keep in mind, since there's no more mythics, you're not bound to build this first, which is absolutely amazing. So now you can build whatever your first core item is, then build Infinity Edge. Or you might do, like how we used to have it, where you'd build, whatever first item, a Zeal item, and then IE, and you're good. So great. Next up is ER. Same gold. Again, the reason why this is in the S tier is that if you're a champion who can actually benefit from reduced CDs, so Ezreal, Sivir, Lucian, it's going to be almost mandatory, especially now that there's no longer like Gale Force, where Lucian would choose Gale Force over ER in some cases until they nerfed Gale Force. This will be extremely important, so it's going to stay. Next up, Kraken. Again, it's basically the exact same thing, and the reason why it's going to stay is that it just gives too much damage, and it's honestly just too good of an item in the beginning of the game. Like, if you're a Lucian, yeah, you could build Stormrazor as 20 more AD, and that's pretty good. But if you're going to land a bunch of autos thanks to its passive or whatever champion you're playing, you're probably going to want to push into Kraken. So this item's really good. And yeah, if you're that kind of champion, this is probably your go-to first item. At least if you're aiming for crit. Next up, Stormrazor. So this is 100 more gold, but it gets 5 additional AD. It has 60 AD. There's only one item that you could even think of for an AD to pick up that would be above 65 AD, and that's Hydra. And then the only AD item that's actually above this in general is IE. Or like crit item, right? Is IE. This can get above, but again, you need like levels in a certain threshold of health. So this is rather good. And so this will most likely be the go-to item for champs like Aphelios, maybe Draven, and others. Just again, because plus 5 more AD is really amazing. And you don't typically get how would I say it? You used to get how would I okay, let's rephrase this. So Kraken was rushed at one point for champs like Aphelios, but that was mostly because Stormrazor got nerfed. And then when they rebuffed Stormrazor, it became the go-to item for those champs, and this will make it even more so. So yeah, this is a great item. I think I had it. I have it in A tier. It could be an S tier maybe, but honestly, A tier is fine. Really good item. None of the this changed at all either. Like the build path, none of the build paths for these changed either, from what I know. No. Okay. Well, besides this, and basically say this is just because Hammer now has the moat. So instead of it being just like double longsword into Hammer, so 400 gold recipe, the recipe is really cheap, and you can actually pick this up if you don't have enough gold, which is rather nice. Next up, we have should hit into. I don't want to do that yet. Okay, we'll do lifesteal items. We'll do lifesteal items. That's what we could do next. So for the lifesteal items, we have BT. It's the exact same thing, no changes at all. You still get 55 AD because it's been nerfed. It is the most expensive item for ADC itemization. It's still fine. Like, it's a good late game item, right? Because you get a lot of like bonus AD, which just pushes you past 70, and it makes it rather useful. Of course, if you're stacking AD, champs like Draven could get IE plus this plus Stormrazor, and they're gonna hit you for a really hard amount. So it's a pretty good item. It goes into A tier. This actually switches into A tier for a couple reasons. I probably would put it. Actually, well, it's either A tier or B tier. I wasn't 100% sure where I should put it, and it might be B tier under one reasoning. So it's the same item, as you can tell, but one difference. It doesn't have the attack speed amplification when the shield procs. That's pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. Like, that kind of sucks because at least before, if you did have the shield proc, you have like kind of like this fight or flight kind of situation now, which was nice. But the fact they removed it now makes it just a shield item. So it's okay. Like because also I kind of have it here because they also nerfed GA, which I will go over later. Um, and also they nerfed another defensive item. So I'm like a little in between these two, but most likely in the end, you probably would preference Bloodthirster if it really came to it over Shield Bow. Um, for now, at least, just on top of my head, and then of course, well, might want to hit that. I'll hit. I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna save hitting Borg. So those are lifesteal items, and then we can go into the on hit items and then the Zeal items. So for the Zeal items, we have Phantom Dancer right here. It's an S tier. I'll keep in mind I didn't put down Hurricane or RFC in this list. That's mostly just because these items have had 0 changes, and that's like fine. So for PD, they made one change to this only, and it is instead of you gaining movement speed for stacks, you gain attack speed. And of course, also, when you hit max stacks with PD prior, then you'd get the attack speed, but now you get the attack speed right away. That's rather good. Like, you getting attack speed sooner means that you're going to amp up faster, and that makes the item far better. Like, if I'm building this as a second item, I feel pretty happy now. For the let's see. Well, I'll go over these so even though I didn't include them. For Hurricane, it's the same thing. RFC, same thing. There's no changes for these two items. They're both going to be in exact same spots, which are situational because, well, you're only really interested in these items if your champion actually synergizes with it. As a holistic view, Phantom Dancer is very good though. And then we have this item, Static Shiv. Now, it's not exactly a Zeal item, but I always kind of think of it like that just because that's how old Static Shiv was. This item's just trash. Even though it has these stats, it no longer has amplification to minions, and that's pretty bad. So because of that, I just don't really see the point of it. It doesn't have like a role in the game anymore. Before you take it because you could get pushed with it, but now that you don't have that, it's just like a little zap and that's it. So I don't really see the point of this item. It goes at the end. Next, we're gonna look at the on-hit items, and to start that off, we're gonna go with Rage Blade. Now, Rage Blade is pretty good. I think the main thing to really say about this is that before it would actually convert your crit chance into on hit, it doesn't do that anymore. And the reason why that's so important is the fact that, well, now you can build into crit. You can build Infinity Edge with Rage Blade. That's crazy. Like, there's a few champs that synergize with this, like Vayne, that you can think of, and that is super interesting. Like Kog'Maw too. So I'm very curious to see how this works because if it turns out good at all, it will be broken 100%. That's for sure. And keep in mind, you don't have to build this like right away either, because Rage Blade before was a mythic, so you could build this later in the game while getting stronger early items, and then build this and suddenly your champ just spikes like crazy. Like Vayne with like more levels in W, and then she builds Rage Blade later. Huge. So yeah, that's really neat. And that's why it's in S tier. This is another on-hit item. It's a new on-hit item called Terminus. Now, the reason I put this in S tier is for one main reason. And it's basically that it just kind of It kind of does just too much for one item. It has decent attack speed, right? Like PD gives you 30% attack speed, 20 like 40% attack speed, 20% attack speed. This gives you 30. Gives you 40 AD. This gives you 30. This gives you 20. No movement speed, but you get up to 15 armor and MR from hitting, and you get up to 30% pen. Now, if you build this as your defensive item, and this is really important as your defensive item, because I'll look at this in a little bit, but this actually got nerfed. This is something an AD player will never build, but this got nerfed. So, and this got nerfed. So your mainstay defensive items, and this also got nerfed. So your mainstay defensive items got nerfed, and now they're adding a new one, but this new one actually has a huge benefit to adding pen. And if you can imagine, you build more armor pen, you could have up to 60% armor pen. You will melt any tank in front of you. You will absolutely eviscerate other champions. That's crazy. That's nuts. This item, 100% to me, has to be S tier, off that alone. Now, if we go push this into further parts, let's see. We have Bork and Wit's End, which I'll look at. So Wit's End, it is 300 gold cheaper. So it's a cheaper item, but, there's a huge but, it has no AD on it. And it also has tenacity. This is like the opposite of what you want as an AD. Like, yeah, sure, tenacity could be fine at times. But if you're building this, it's just, I just don't really see the point. Like, at this point, I'd rather just get Maw. That's why I put Maw at A tier, because since Wits is basically hard nerfed, your MR options are basically Scimitar or Maw. And Maw gives 65 AD for 2,800 gold, which is absolutely amazing. And you also get Lifesteal, as a benefit. Unlike this, that doesn't have a benefit when you get a shield, this does. So this item goes up in value, again, because this also got nerfed, and it's like, okay, this is a really damn good item to have as like my defensive item against magic users, not this anymore. So Maw goes up. If this is also nerfed and you're not wanting to build this anymore for on-hit users, okay, that's not ideal. So now it's like, well, I'm not going to build Wits with Rage Blade. And then Bork. So Bork, it costs 100 less gold. But the main difference between Bork, and this is why I put in C tier for ADs, is that there's no siphon. Before, after you get the third hit, you get a kind of like the siphon damage. It's like 60 to 100 damage or something like that. And then you'd slow them for 25%. It's not possible anymore. That's gone. You just get an initial slow that's like pretty whatever. So the item's like not as good, which is, and okay, I'm gonna say right now, like, I shouldn't say like necessarily it's like terrible. It just doesn't feel as good anymore. So this drops down. So even though Rage Blade to me is kind of like an S tier because it's just like an item you'll throw in, I feel like the on hits outside of this item, like Bork and Wits, are worse. So champions that are like full on hit are probably not gonna be a thing in League. At least not with like how these are initially. Because like, also keep in mind, Kaisa was only a few champs and went Nashers, and this is 80 AP versus 100, so she can't even get the upgrade. So she's not gonna build this, or she would prefer not building it at this point. Like, she's probably better building like Zonias or something like that. So yeah, that's not great. That's definitely not great. And then pushing in from this into the pen items, these have remained the same. It's really, well, actually, I take that back. They're not exactly the same. So Mortal Reminder is 100% the same thing. Dom actually got plus 5 AD, so it's 40 AD, so it's the same as Mortal Reminder, and that is why Dom is now over Reminder. Before, you could say there's a little difference between the two, and maybe these both would be an A tier, but the fact that it has that over this one, it now goes into A tier. Okay, great. Now, Mura, it's the same item. Again, if you're just gonna build this if you're like a tier user, right? No difference. This here, this got nerfed into that you need to have pen items to actually make it worthwhile. Because you don't get an increase into the pen itself unless you buy it. Um, unless you buy other pen items. So to me, this can work, and I put it in situation instead of just saying it's shit, because if you go into the actual pen items, you know, there was times where Ezreal would go ER into Dustblade or oh god, what was the other item he went? Eclipse maybe? I think he was either going Eclipse or Dustblade with ER, and then he got Grudge. Now, this could work with that completely. Like he could have let's see, I don't even know what would be a good item for him. I don't know. The only thing is I'm not necessarily sure like what he would go. Like I guess in theory you could go opportunity, but it wouldn't really benefit Ezreal that much. Could benefit Lucian in a way. Might not be so easy, but regardless, you know, the idea that you build one pen item, you know, you get ER or whatever, and then you get Grudge. That's really the only way I could see this happening. Otherwise, it's a pretty bad item for like just anyone in general, and it's definitely a weaker item, and not one you can just like do Triforce blank Grudge and be happy. Um, Now what I really want to get into are these like Bruiser items that ADs can build, which are very interesting and kind of change the scope of things. So obviously the first thing to address is that Triforce now has 10 less ability haste, but 10 more AD, which is amazing. But of course, since it's not a mythic, it doesn't have the, you know, nice bonus that you have like up to 30% more base AD from stats. So it's a weaker scaling item, a better early game item, which by and all is like fine. But to me, I feel like some of these other changes may make Trinity you not care as much about Trinity, and we'll see how that plays out in the end. Um, I definitely will like mess with it a little bit, but this is why I put Trinity at B. It's like this and ER. ER increased by 100 gold. Nothing changed about it, which kind of sucks that they increased it by 100 gold but added nothing to it. But ER in the end, like, you know, if you get this, then obviously Ezreal is going to get Navori, and then he might even get like Shojin, and then just have a shit ton of like CD reduction, which is amazing. Compared to just having Trinity and then like kind of figuring stuff out from there. Like, yeah, he can go into ER still, he can still go into Shojin, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But Trinity, it's like okay, nothing crazy, but it's okay. ER, it's okay. Like same thing. Like it's a little bit 100 more gold. It's not like broken or anything like that. This item might be really good, and I'm just so tempted in it because so you see this attacking unit gives you 20 movement speed. Same thing. Dealing physical damage grants you 20% movement speed, 20 bonus movement speed. That's so interesting. And because before sometimes there was like a weird build where actually an Ezra would go Stridebreaker, uh, for like the when it had the dash, and that in itself was like really good. This doesn't have the dash, but you know, if you look at the stats and the fact that again, like certain defensive items got nerfed, um, it has what is it? Decent AD, a lot of health, attack speed, so it's great. You have attack speed on it. You get ability to kite better from doing physical damage or auto attacking. The slow is very interesting because how would I say it? It's like if someone jumps on top of you and you activate this, you get bonus movement speed. And if there's like two people on top of you, you could have a huge surge of movement speed to kite away with a cleanse, and that could be your defensive item. Because the health is a lot. Like the 400 health is no joke. So that definitely can fill in for your defensive needs. So I put it at A. Or do I put it at A? No, I put it at B. And it could be A. I'm not 100% sure because it's just a guess. But this could be really interesting. This, I showed it in the assassin part, but you can crit on the first champion you hit and then heal. Now, I highly doubt any AD will actually build like hard AD and make this worthwhile, especially because, if you go into full crit, you're probably going to crit anyways because you're going to have like 60 to 80% crit chance. So why would you care about having that one-time chance? But I can see a world where you're in late game. Maybe it's your 6th item or something like that. Or maybe you are like a Draven who has like 3 of the, like 2, like, I don't know, Stormrazor, like Hydra, something else. And you build this. That one-time crit is pretty insane. Like, I don't know. I can see a world where this would be very toxic in some situations, but that's why it's a B tier item. It's not broken. It's just good if you have certain items as a certain champ, and you can make that work. Then there's Hydra. Again, so I put this here because it has a ton of AD. Like 70 AD is really nice. It has ability haste. Obviously, the cleave activate is like pretty useless for you, but again, it's just interesting to have this kind of option. Obviously, before you had a stacking mechanic to get more AD as like an Ezreal or whatever, and that was really nice. But who knows? Maybe I could see a world where people are building this. So again, that's at B tier. Shouchen is just situational. Not everyone's gonna build it, but just think it's because they added Focus Will. So it's like your spells deal more damage as like up to like 12%, which is super interesting. Like, I don't know. Again, for champions like Lucian, champions like him, I mean, granted, it's just a flat ability haste. It's not like based on your auto attacks, it's a flat ability haste. So you just get like a hard impact on like your CDR. But that can be rather good for certain champs. And again, it has a little bit of health, so it can be incorporated a little bit as a defensive item. And again, this is also why you would still want to build ER. Not ER, the Vori, if you're certain champs, because this is not like the old version of Shojin where like you could actually get away with just building this. It also does make it worse on bruisers, but like regardless, that's not what I'm talking about. So this could be interesting, really interesting. But it's situational. And finally, experimental Hexplate. Now, like I said, I've been saying this entire time, your defensive items got nerfed. The fact that this gives you 20% attack speed, and then when you cast your ultimate, you gain 35, so now you have 55% attack speed, which is nuts. This is literally more than PD, by the way. Or not more, this is the same as PD with max stacks, just from pressing your ultimate. And then you get 15% bonus movement speed. Look how much this gives. 7%. 10. 7. Okay. So you're getting almost double that, plus more attack speed, plus more AD, plus 300 health, and your ulti gains 30 haste. So it gains over 20% CDR alone. That's nuts. Now, I wasn't sure if I should put into S tier, but the fact that it also has 300 health, this, again, defensive items are nerfed. That makes it you kind of like a defensive item replacement. The fact that it gives you such an amplification in damage, like just raw damage, makes this item seem kind of busted. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, especially because if you're going crit, you need to obviously continue to build crit, right? Like if you're going IE, you're probably going to want to build PD or something like that, or maybe get one of these items, and then you're going to want to get a pen item. Maybe you get this instead. But you could also throw this in later on, and holy shit, this is just such a big boost of like just kiting, damage, everything. So yeah, that's really good. And then of course GA, it's the same thing, but well, it's basically the same thing, but it costs 200 more, which is pretty shit. So, and you don't get stopwatch. So keep that in mind. You also don't get stopwatch. So it's situational, but if I gave it a general like view, it's like a D. Like it's rather bad. And I can move this easily to B as well. So this is my tier list for 80 itemization. I think there's going to be a need to experiment a lot with this compared to other classes because it's just 80s are just so used to having been forced to go one way with the mythic choices. And now because Rageblade is just completely released, and then you have certain items that are like dipping into the HP portion of the game, but they actually benefit your champ. Now means you might have like tankier, like kind of like more, yeah, like kind of like bigger, tankier ADs, but maybe less damage. Seems super interesting to me. Uh, we'll see. I think this was probably the hardest set of items to review so far, just because it's just it's just different. I don't know. I think as mage items were very plainly obvious, like what was good and what was bad, and the same with assassin items. But with ADs, it's like clearly these are really good, like easily the best. You could tell that these items are still rather good. And then this being an addition, and then some of these like the fall of on hit kind of pushes up like the crit and bruiser based itemization. But if you're going Rageblade plus this, and then maybe you grab like this and even this, like suddenly you might be having like this tanky on hit, but like obviously you don't have probably don't have Bork or like Wits End like AD, and that's just super weird. So we'll see. It could either create a very toxic set of champions, like build pass for champions, or it'll just be like normal. We'll see. Thanks for watching.